Welcome everyone to another episode of Life Chat with Vivinville. Today we are continuing our conversation about Black History Month. And today we're taking our Black history all the way across the ocean to Canada and to England. And we wanted to know internationally how they celebrate Black History Month and if they do have Black History Month in those particular countries. So we wanted our guests to introduce ourselves. We have Shelly and we have Jackie. Shelly is no stranger to our podcast because she's been here before speaking about social, what was it, Vilma? Social unrest?
Social justice, yeah, Black Lives Matter.
Yes, exactly. So introduce yourselves again, ladies, and let our audience know who you are and where you're from or whatever else you want to share before we jump right in.
So thank you so much for having me on the show again, Vilma and Vivalent. And my name is Shelly again. I am from Ontario, Canada, living in the capital city of Ottawa, and just working here, working full-time, studying on the side, trying to pursue an education in philosophy. So very excited for that. But in the meantime, I'm glad to be joined by like-minded people in conversations about the world around me, the world around us, what's going on in our lives, and how we can affect change in any platform that we are a part of. So thank you for having me again.
You're welcome.
Wonderful.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Jacqueline. I'm living in London, UK. I live, I was born here, and to be honest, for many years, we didn't really celebrate Black History. We knew nothing about Black History Month. So when it was eventually introduced in the UK, we celebrated in October, and I always felt that maybe the essence of it wasn't really correct, because we tended to concentrate on like sports, sports individuals and actors, and I thought, we really don't get down to the grassroots of real Black history. Or negatively, we would always be taught about slavery, which again I really had a problem with. So I'm just interested to join you ladies and hear your views, and I'll share my views.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Jackie, on your views and how they started in England and what you think that they're not really celebrating Black History Month. What is your definition of Black History Month, and what do you perceive Black history to be, Black History Month, that you think that what they need to do better?
Well, first off, I think they need to stop concentrating on the origin of slavery, because that, as far as I'm concerned, that is not Black history. Black history goes well beyond that, and before that. So I think that's the first thing in the UK that they need to, when they talk about celebrating it on the TV, you will see programs, movies, and they're always about slavery. It's only recently we've started seeing things like Hidden Figures, and I mean, that's just one that I can think of, and Jackie Robinson's story and stuff like that. But prior to that, I would say that it was always about slavery, and that was a real issue for me personally, and especially when I was my children were smaller, and I was teaching them about, before it was even introduced in school, I would always say to them, that's not our history. It goes far beyond that. So for me, that's always been a major thing.
So to follow up on what you're saying, Jackie, so what about that were they promoting? Was just they're celebrating slavery or celebrating the end of slavery?
Well, they would lead us to, I feel, I'm going to speak personally from my opinion, I would say that they'd want us to believe that they're celebrating the end of slavery, but you know, to me, it never ever felt like that.
Mm.
Simply because what about the history of the people that you enslaved? And I've always said, I can remember having a conversation last year with my cousin when I was in Jamaica, and she was saying to me, oh, Black History Month, I'm not interested in it because all they ever show you is about slavery, Black people being enslaved and being taken from Africa and taken to the Caribbean or the Americas. So I remember my response to her was that you need to remember that we're not we're not slaves. We were enslaved people. We had a history before we were captured, or our ancestors were captured and taken away to other lands to put to toil on plantations and so forth. So I said, that's the first thing that I feel we need to get out of our head. Stop thinking, oh, you know what? I'm not interested in Black History Month because it's always about negativity. Mm-hmm. We need to concentrate on the positivity. It's the positive side of Black History Month.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Shelley, so how is it on your end?
In Canada, it's at a government level is where they create programs to educate on historical figures that have made a difference in Canada. So if you go on government.ca, governmentcanada.ca, then you'll see articles written out. It's where it comes into implementing that actual learning into society, into all the brackets of society, to actually teach people about Canadian history, about Nova Scotian settlers, about the people who fought in the who fought with the British Empire to keep Canada independent from like American invaders. There's a lot of history with Black people in Canada, but the government does a good job at creating articles, but it doesn't do a great job at implementing that education down the ladder. My sister and I and our friends in high school had to make up our own program for Black History Month to actually implement it in our high schools, to talk about it, to showcase some of the Black people in our present time that are making differences in our country. It's not all about slavery. And I will agree with Jacqueline so much on that about slave history, because in my opinion, slave history isn't even Black history. That is an institution that was brought in by Europeans. And, you know, even the abolitionists were Europeans themselves who fought against it. And this institution was created by them, for them. And that's a history they have to struggle with themselves. That's a history that was put onto us. We were enslaved, like Jacqueline said. We didn't have a slave culture, like how America and Europe put slave culture in our lives, if you guys know what I mean there. So it's not really, it shouldn't be our responsibility to talk about our experience in slavery, because it wasn't an institution that we brought in. It was an institution that was imposed on us. So firstly, if we can get away from even highlighting slavery in Black history, that would be amazing, because it wasn't even us who did it. So that would be a great step away from it. Also, just highlighting all the stuff that Black Canadians do today would be better to respect our heritage, respect our history, rather than constantly going back in the past and making kind of like a separate kind of historical viewpoint when all of our history is combined together. So I see Canada doing a little bit of work at the top to try and educate, but they don't do anything to really get it into people's schools, into our workplaces. In my workplace also, we're fighting for some representation this month of what Canadians have done in the industry, in the cannabis industry, but no knowledge there. It's a battle that definitely people like us who care about it to show our stories will have to bring that to light. The perspective from Canada for now.
Okay. some good insights there. So
Mhm.
it's not in the school. So a young child coming up in, say, elementary, middle school, high school, they have no knowledge of what Black history is in Canada. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they don't. It was something that was really February, as Black History Month only came about in 1996, which is the year I was born. So that was only 25 years ago, where our first elected Black government worker, John Augustine, she implemented it to be legal that all provinces celebrate Black History Month in February. So it's very recent. When we brought it to our high school, we did a whole assembly and featured people right now today in our communities that were helping programs with soccer to help, kids be innovative, be creative. And one of our own brothers in our society, in our community, was helping push people into sports and into things that they're passionate about and that they can use their skills on. So we're highlighting that person in our history today, and people were really surprised, and people were really grateful to have that kind of perspective, because that assembly was really well done by my friends and I. We were really passionate about it, and we also gave time to educate people on Africa today, not just young people starving and at the wayside and having flies all over their faces. We showed a thriving society in Senegal, a very, very hubbub urban situation that's going on there. And people, our classmates were surprised too. The ignorance is out there, and we just have to combat that ignorance with our stories and our experience in our lives. And that will help create a better narrative for Black stories today than living in the past constantly and taking on responsibilities for enslavement that really isn't ours to take. That is a legacy of Europe and a legacy of America that they need to wrestle with and that they need to take responsibility for. That's not our history.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I'm just going to add there, it's not just a legacy for America, because I feel for the UK, there is an awful lot of emphasis put on slavery being an American thing. We all know for a fact, if we know our history, that Britain was a big instigator of slavery in the colonies, in the West Indies, in India, in Africa. And so it pains me sometimes when, like, what we do learn in the UK is about Americans' relationship with slavery and not Britain's connection with it. That to me is very, very worrying and very misleading. We hear the brilliant stories of the abolitionists, and we hear about William Wilberforce, and that's great that he did that, but they tend to, excuse the pun, whitewash the fact that they were involved in it full on. And a lot of our institutes in the UK are built off slavery, but they will never, they'll never actually ever come out and say that to you. They always talk about the fact that, slavery was in America, it was in the South, was plantation owners that was doing all these bad things, and the British, we were there fighting for the Africans to be free, which is untrue.
That's just a lie. It's just a lie, and it's a shame where they try and sweep things under the rugs, because the problem we're faced with today is the lack of responsibility that anyone wants to take in actions that have caused so much pain. So, and we face this in Canada, this ignorance of Britain's involvement. Some of my older relatives, like, seriously say to my face that there was no slavery in Canada. And I'm like, whoa, where did you get that from? Why is there this assumption that, Britain is just there for their enlightened people, which Britain took a lot of history to get there, to get to the abolitionists. That history we can't forget about, because when settlers from Canada were writing letters to Britain saying we need workers, we cannot develop this land, Britain signed the order to enslave Africans and enslave Native people in Canada. So they signed that, and they went along with it for an amount of time to help build up the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I only recently discovered, I think sometime last year, I discovered that I knew that historically I'd read where the slave owners, the plantation owners in the West Indies had been compensated for the loss of their property. But I had no idea that my parents and myself were still paying back that compensation that had been made to them all those years ago. It literally, I think, only stopped about 3 or 4 years ago. We paid off the debt. And that to me is like such a slap in the face, to say that the people that you basically, these plantation owners had to like release because of the abolition of slavery, were now compensated. It's bad enough they were compensated, and the people that they'd enslaved had to work as I believe it was called, they had to work as apprentice. So they had to do, I think it was 5 or 7 years, something like that, without any pay. And then they were then able to say that they were given a bit of land or maybe the property or something. So that was all they got if they were lucky. But that their ancestors were then having to pay back their enslavers for compensation for having to get rid of slavery. I think that's terrible. And it wasn't something that was widely known until, as I said, I only found out about 1.5 years ago, and I was just astonished when I read the article.
So
Crazy.
Jackie, how did you pay back? Was that a tax in a government?
We pay in our taxes, in the government taxes, Mm-hmm. But it wasn't something that was publicized, was widely publicized. It was, I guess you call it a whistleblower, just came out and let it be known that, like, you do realize that, like, the ancestors of these enslaved people were paying back the debt that was compensation to the plantation owners in the West Indies.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah. That's terrible.
Yeah,
that's terrible. I saw that come out over last summer during the Black Lives Matter protest, what was happening in Britain with the young people. That's where I found that out, about the taxes. And being in Canada, this nation isn't free. We're still under Britain laws and under Britain rule. So we are also paying those taxes. Taxes. And it's so wrong. And that's why people don't want to educate about this. That's why the focus on is on Black people and not on Europeans and not on Americans and not on those actual perpetrators. Because the more we start learning about this, the more history is unveiled and people start understanding what happened. The crimes just keep mounting higher and higher. And after crimes mount this way, where's the justice? Where's the answer? So it's very sad. It is
very sad. And I mean, one more closer, I'd say, to my heart is, I'm sure you guys must have heard about the Windrush scandal, where basically West Indians came to the UK. They would have often, especially like children, they would have travelled on their parents' passport. They then introduced this law where you needed to basically prove that you were legally here. A lot of these people that came over as children, they'd never returned to the islands that they came from. They'd worked, but they hadn't felt the need to go and get like documents like a passport and driving license. And basically what was happening was they were then being I'm going to say just hauled in and told, like, basically, you need to prove to us that you were legally entitled to be in this country. And they were put in detention centres, and often a large majority of them were sent back to islands that they'd left there as babies or children, and they knew no one there, simply because there was no one to fight on their behalf. And, you know, they basically didn't know who to go to. And because it was at that particular time when it started, it was very hush hush. So like, and also I'm going to say, we as Black people, we're coming from a culture where we're very proud people. So we have a tendency that when we are going through any kind of problem, rather than going and talking to somebody else about it, we'd rather just be tight-lipped about it, or hope that it will just go away. It, you know, it will sort itself out. And invariably, this is what was happening to a lot of people, that basically they were like, well, how can I be illegal? I've been in this country for like 40 odd, 50 odd years. You know, I've worked, I've gone to school here and stuff. They were being asked to find, I mean, these were people that were like in their 50s and their 60s, were being told that they need to go and show their school records. I mean, I was born here, and I'd be hard done by. Okay, my primary school is still around, but my secondary school no longer exists. So for me to get records to prove that I went to in your case, you guys call it high school, that I went to this high school, well, it doesn't exist anymore. So this is what was happening with a lot of these people, that they were no longer entitled to, they either, if they had a job, they got sacked from their job because it's illegal for an employer to employ someone that doesn't have legal status here. So they lost their jobs. They, if they had benefits, they weren't entitled to benefits because, again, they were deemed to be an illegal immigrant. And one gentleman, I believe, he had been diagnosed with cancer. He was refused treatment because of this, because they said basically if he wanted to be treated for the cancer, he would have to pay for it himself because he was an illegal immigrant. He'd been here since he was like I think he'd come here when he was like about maybe 6 or 7 years old. This was now a man in his 50s. And you're saying, you know, like, he's been working, paying his taxes, paying his national insurance, and you're being told you don't have a legal right to be here. And then was being detained in detention centres, and then, like, basically being very hostilely told that, look, you know, it's in your best interest to just go back where you come from. And they were being put on flights and just being taken back to whichever island they felt that's where they came from.
This is interesting to me because it's funny. We have the same things going on in the U.S. We have people who, you know, came from the Latino countries and they're kept in detention center. We have those same issues going on here. But, you know, in that standpoint, what they're doing, I did hear about it through my family who's in England. That's just bad. And I think also in England, they said that if you're first generation born in England, you are not actually a British
English,
right?
No,
you
which is me,
the second or third generation, which I thought was very interesting. You know, and I guess it's the way for them to keep, you know, people in their place as just, you know.
Most definitely.
Right. The other thing I heard was when people left for vacation to go back to the country of origin, they were denied entrance back to the United Kingdom, to England, and had to be, and that's how they were left there in their country of origin, which they knew nobody basically, because the people they grew up with were no longer in that community. You know, friends and stuff were just like they going back for vacation to see the island. They couldn't adapt to the lifestyle there, but they were left stranded because they were denied re-entry into
re-entry in the UK. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So many cases of that. And then the other big outcry at the present moment is that, like, the people then that it was unfounded that they were, that, you know, it was a bad thing that the government had done, and they would be giving them compensation. A lot of the people have died before they even saw any of that money, and some have got a fraction of it but are still waiting. Some have never seen any of the compensation they get. For example, people lost their homes. So, for example, they had a mortgage, they lost their job, they could no longer pay their mortgage, so they were made homeless. They were then having to rely on friends and relatives to put them up, or to lend them money and so forth. And these are the things that they were supposed to be compensating them for, and they are still waiting for it. And quite a few of the individuals have passed away and not seen a penny of this money.
So if I should bring us back to both of you sound very versed on what is happening. You have a lot of knowledge, a wealth of information. Now, what can you do to make Black history in your different countries more of a learning and a sharing of information to your children and grandchildren? I know, Shelley, I say grandchildren and children. But how can you disseminate this knowledge so that people will have a new appreciation of their ancestors and what they have done or what they are doing at the moment? How can you do that?
Well, if I could start, that's a pretty big question. That's a pretty big question because there's a lot that needs to be done for us to first understand what our history is, what we as a Black community want to tell our history as being, not what is imposed on us. I think that's important for it to be said on our terms and how we want to share it. So firstly, I get rid of Black History Month. I throw that out the window and be like, my history, I'm not marginalized in this country. My history is all around history. So that feeling of being marginalized, I don't like. And that's something that I was born into because, like I said, 1996 is when they put this in there. So I didn't have a say of, how do I want to express my culture, my history? First generational child being born in Canada, we lose a bit of our own history, our own identity that way, because sometimes parents don't want to share like their experience in Jamaica or in the Caribbean, personally, I find the history of the Caribbean Isles to be a mystery. So for me to be able to help the community understand Black history, I would first need to understand my own history in the islands and see what happened there, how my family's lives were impacted, how that translated into us moving into Canada in the first place, and where that settles us today. So that's a journey of self-understanding, of understanding our own communities, understanding our food, our music culture, our religious culture too. All of those play a role in how we show our communities who we are. So a better understanding of self-identity would help too. And then finally, just sharing our food authentically. If I'm living in Ottawa, there's not a lot of Caribbean people here just yet. They're moving in slowly. And the Caribbean food I find here is very, very bland, very, playing it on the safe side. We don't need to play on the safe side. We show who we are. We show our real authentic flavors, our taste, and we expect people to accept us with open arms. That's what I think our generation needs to expect from the outside world. You accept who we are, how we want to be shown, how we want to voice ourselves, and no one else is writing our history but us. So to take that stance, to take that control, and to be proud of ourselves for it is what I would do in that situation.
Wonderful.
Okay, for myself, I would personally get rid of Black History Month. I don't believe our history should be marginalized in 1 month. Our history is every day, as far as I'm concerned, just like the European history is every day. When I went to school, they didn't tell me that, oh, January or April is going to be European History Month. I learned about European history every day I was at school. So I feel that first off, it should be on the curriculum in the UK. I actually belong to a group that is like working towards that. So I support them wholeheartedly as much as I can in doing that. Also, what I do is I use my my social media platform for enlightening people. And this is not just my own Black people. This is anybody that follows me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name, all the ones that I'm on. I highlight details, information about Black individuals that have made significant points and are icons for us as Black people, because I struggle with the fact that a lot of time for other cultures, they see us negatively. And I think it's because they are not educated. So I think that we need to be more proactive and help them. I'm not saying that we're going to get everyone to be thinking that way, but to get them to stop thinking of us in a negative manner. And we can only do that by educating them. And that is by sharing information, because often a lot of times I will get from like European friends or colleagues, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's really interesting. And I always respond by saying, well, you know what? That's what the internet's there for. All you've got to do is Google and it will come up. So that's what I do on my own personal level, with people that I work with or people that follow me, as I say, on my social network platforms. For my children, my oldest son is 37, my youngest is 29. From the day they could read, I have been buying Black literature for them. They went to a Saturday school that was an Afro-Caribbean Saturday school. So they were educated. So although they went to mainstream school, they were educated not only by myself, but by the Saturday school about their culture, the culture they're coming from. So even though they are British like myself, I've never hidden from them the fact of this is where, your grandparents, your great-grandparents are coming from. I take them to, right up until they are now old enough to take themselves there. They regularly made trips to Jamaica. So they were, and when they went to Jamaica, it wasn't just about them staying in relatives' home and just going to the beach. I would take them to places of historical interest on the island, because there is plenty there. I sometimes think that we embrace too much of this thing of like, oh, we're going back to the island, we're going back to our homeland, but we all choose to stay in these resorts, which is a very artificial perception of what the island is all about. So exactly. So that's what I've done with my children. I don't have any grandchildren as yet, but my godchildren, the ones that are in this country, and even the little one that I have in Jamaica. Whenever I go and visit, I take her out to places that are, again, of historical interest, so that she knows. She's taught at school, but I think it's important for parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles to all get on board with educating, because I think sometimes we put too much emphasis on teachers teaching our children. They have our children for a very small percentage of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
We are their role models. We should be their role models.
Mm-hmm.
So they learn from us.
Yeah.
So if we show an interest, they will follow us at the end of the day. So those are the things that I do in order to promote positive Black history.
Awesome, awesome.
Great. I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, Vilma, that the things that they say is basically our show last week we had. If our audience remember, that they were saying basically the same thing, that we should celebrate Black history every day. It shouldn't be a month. They were saying the same thing, that we need to look at the positive things of the Black community versus highlighting all the negative and the negative things that the media trying to spread. So we had a family on that was a African American family that was totally born in this country, and they were talking about Black history and their experiences. And it's just amazing that you guys all clear across the Atlantic or wherever you are, if direction, you guys are saying the same thing about, we should celebrate Black history every month, every day. It shouldn't be a month thing. And saying the same thing, that we need to get away from the negative stereotype that the media is selling to the Black community, and to embrace our culture, embrace who we are, and in knowing who we are. So I just find that very interesting.
So in other words, as you guys look at America and you see how we celebrate Black history, and what are your thoughts? That was going to be my next question. I think I'm able to get some insight from what you just said, but how do you think we handle Black History Month? Are you aware of the things that go on here in this country?
I'm going to say, when I've got family that live in Philadelphia, so I've been out there quite a few times to visit, and I can remember on one occasion I went with my sons, and I remember the first time I ever heard about this holiday, Kwanzaa.
Mm-hmm.
Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes.
Yes, Kwanzaa.
I was just like in awe. I'm going to be honest with you. This was 1993, and I was absolutely in awe, because we had nothing like that in the UK, and I would have been so glad to be able to drag it back to the UK and basically ram it down the Europeans' throats and say, right, we need something like that in the UK. So that is something that still stays very strong with me, that I admire that particular holiday. But that, I have to say, is probably one of the main things I know about how Black history is celebrated in the US.
I would say what I see mostly coming out of the US, which is great for maybe our countries that don't have a lot of Black population, is the amount of voices that we see narrating our own story this year, our own our own history, our own innovation. I saw this girl on Instagram who was doing many different hairstyles of her own creation with beautiful hair, and it was just like, yes, we can see voices just emerging more and more out of America, and it's amazing. The platforms that we have, Instagram, Snapchat, all of that, is a way for us to just glimpse and to see people like you, people like me, people, just everyday people just sharing their love, sharing their culture, sharing their beliefs. And it's amazing to see. It's not just a one viewpoint, narrow mindset of what Black history is, the same old, not the same old history, but like the same figures that we all know went to, like, every year, Martin Luther Jr., Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, like, all those people are amazing in our history, and we need to highlight and remember their courage. We also need to look out into today and see the people who are paving ways today and making a history and celebrating them and celebrating us, because our voices will never die. It will never die. So that's what I love seeing coming out of America, and hope that it lights a fire for the rest of us in the world just watching.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I agree. I think, it needs to be relevant, I think is the word.
Yeah.
As you say, it's great to have those iconic individuals like Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King. But that was then. Like with everything in life, it needs to be rebooted, it needs to be updated, and it needs to be relevant. And as much as we're going to say to young people about like all these older icons that we're trailblazers for Black people, we also need to show them people that are now alive and living and what they are doing and what how, so that they can see a pathway to a more positive future.
I think that there is a change before, like a few years back. You are correct. We highlighted those people that were well known, but I see the trend, which is more and more people are being, put in the media in the forefront. You have Black movies that are highlighted during this period. You have people who are current, who we talk about. They are being interviewed on various television and radio shows, and we have so it's wider now. We're not just speaking about those people, but we are incorporating them. John Lewis. We have which is recent. May his soul rest in peace. That just passed away just before the election last year. But we also have our living people that we commemorate. And so I think it's moving in a positive direction. Is there room for improvement? Yes, there is. But I do see us moving in a positive direction when we are incorporating more. We have more platforms that we can speak out on and talk about. Even this podcast, but we have more available platform where we can speak out and where we can say, these things, and we can, highlight people who are doing well as a Black person in this country.
Yeah. And speaking and jumping off of what Vilma was just saying, what about in your country? Is there any Black leaders or any individuals in your country that you guys can say are role models, like how we have in the U.S.? You mentioned those individuals that, are from the U.S. We talked about, Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King, and current people, like we have a Black president in this country, and now a Black vice president. Who are the leaders, or who are those individuals that you have in Canada and in England?
Well, right directly around me, I don't see like many leaders in my parliament. There are more multicultural people coming around to be in parliament, which is nice. But no voices that are out there that you see, like how we see in the U.S. talking about Black Lives Matter, and stuff like that. There isn't anyone that I see other than the people right beside me, like my friends, my coworkers, my sisters, you guys around me. Those are those people, and in my own family group, we're always shooting back with each other and talking and trying to learn a little bit more than we did last year within our own group. So in Canada, I feel like it is moving, but it's moving on a very small scale and on a very personal scale for now, until maybe we grow into those positions later on in life. There might be a renewal down the line of voices in higher places, but it started off right here where we are now. So at least I can see that and be happy with that for now.
How about you, Jackie?
In the UK, Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can now.
personally in the UK, I feel that they still have a very long way to go. We have black politicians. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of Diane Abbott. She was the first black woman to become a member of parliament, also I believe the youngest. We have some other notable black politicians, but in comparison to the ratios in the House of Commons and even in the House of Lords, we still are very much a minority. We are still very much a voice in the dark that, you know, haven't quite found our place. I feel it's still very much a work in progress. I'd have to say that nowhere in comparison to the US. And I do think it's probably a lot to do with what I did say initially in the beginning, that there is this sort of like fallacy of that everything is fine in the UK. We don't have racism. We don't have prejudice. We all get along really well. You know, we don't have systematic racists in the workplace or in your everyday life. And we all know that's a load of rubbish. We do have it. The difference being in the UK to the US is that it's very covert. It's very subtle. I've been to America many, many times, and believe you me, I've known, my husband has experienced it. We know when, you know, we've been targeted for racism, because it's just bang, slaps you in your face. But in the UK, it's ever so subtle. And if you then challenge it, you're told that you're being hypersensitive, you've got a chip on your shoulder, and so forth. So I think that's probably the reason why we haven't moved further than we have done, unlike America, because there's still this denial that there is actually a problem. I can remember when I came back from when the pandemic started, I was in Jamaica and I got stuck there. I couldn't leave the island until they opened up their borders. Wow. And when I was there, I should have come back in April, the beginning of April, but I didn't actually get on a flight until June. I can remember being with my cousin in Mandeville, and we were watching the news, and it was when it all kicked off with Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And one of the things that we were really astonished by, that Jamaica didn't seem, we were looking all around the world and there were lots of like protesting and, you know, support of it, but in Jamaica it just didn't seem to take off. But one of the things that we did say about us, both of us being born in the UK, said that in the UK, we're very good at like joining, you know, protests and like, you know, demanding rights for our people. But sadly, it's not always genuine and it's not always followed through. So yeah, we saw a lot of protesting in the UK for, you know, the Black Lives Matters. But then it was, as soon as I got back and I was discussing it at work, and I work in an area where it's predominantly white. The first thing I was hearing was, "Oh, well, all lives matters," and well, we're all the same. I don't care what color you are, black, red, yellow, green. And I thought, well, you know, I didn't actually thought. I said to them, you know, like I'm sorry, but like, for me, that's a very dismissive statement because it couldn't be far from the truth. We're not all the same, and it's evidence in so many things. And I started giving like the Windrush scandal, and various other examples. This is where you can't say that we don't have in the UK. We don't have an issue with racism. We do have. So I think that's probably why we've still got a very long way to go until they identify and accept that there is a problem. This is just going to be an ongoing thing in the UK of paying lip service.
Right. Right.
Wow, wow. Well, thank you so much, ladies. I know Shelly has to go, so I this is really a great conversation. But I know, I learned a lot. I heard a lot, with the things that's going on. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Vilma, I don't know if you have any last words or anything like that, but I know we all on a tight schedule today. And I thank you so much, Jackie, for being on because you are 6 hours ahead of us, or is it 8? I don't remember how many hours. 6, yeah. And
I think it's 6 hours.
6, yeah. So we just appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna let Vilma wrap it up with our show, and thank you for sharing and being so candid with everything that you guys have said. We really do appreciate all the insights, and thank you for being a change too, because Shelly, you implement in school the things that you saw needed to improve. You're not just sitting on the sideline, you making a difference. And so also you, Jackie, I really appreciate what you're doing, that you started organizations, you made sure you informed them on social media and all the things that you're doing. We all need to be the voice. If we want to be a change, we need to be the change. So thank you guys so much, and I'm turning it over to Vilma for ending.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And I'll add my share of thanks as well, with my co-host, to say we really do appreciate it, and don't give up, because a little start can only lead to bigger things. So keep doing what you're doing. Soon it will catch on. You've lit the fire and it will start to burn. So just to remind our audience of where you can see us and get this information, we are on Facebook, live chat with Vivanville. We are also on YouTube, so you can check us out, live chat with Vivanville. We have our email that you can email us. Email us if you have a show in mind that you would love to see us. Please send it to us. livechatvivanville@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. Go check out our website, livechatwithvivanville.com. And also, you can find us on a lot of podcast platforms, such as our Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and last but not least, we are also on Vital GH Radio 7 days a week. So, go see us, go hear us,
Yes.
go talk to us.
And subscribe.
Yes,
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you guys again. And this is another episode of Live Chat with Viv and Phil. Goodbye.